However, I pulled the driver's seat out and what's going on, guys? Back again, another video, except this intro video rather, is being shot in the middle of shooting the video. I did shoot another intro, but an awful lot happened very quickly during the course of the week, and it was a bit sort of slow running through things which evolved. So rather than run with that one, I've recorded this one, which is why you can see this here. Now, I'm not a time traveller. This video we are going to pull the loom out of the Celica, clearly. We're going to look at the drive shafts. I'm looking at this one right now. This is still the complete Celica shaft, and engine update. There'll be an engine update. Big things have happened with the engine in the course of the week, like I say. Happened very quickly. So I think without further ado, we should crack on. And we'll start off with the loom. So here we are inside the Celica. Actually, I really like the driving position in this car. The steering wheel is nice and sort of flat, and you sit really low because it's sporty. Yeah, I actually quite like the car, sadly, but she's coming apart. So the stereo is already been ripped out, and in here we can see the loom. The ECU in this car is actually under the bonnet rather than being, yes, a lot of the time they're kind of in passengers' footwells and things, or in the cars that I've taken apart they tend to be. That's mainly MX-5s, to be honest. But the ECU's in the bay, so there's just a loom that feeds through the firewall, sort of around here-ish, and you can see in here there's a stereo wiring, but there's a big chunky loomy boy here, which is all the going to the ignition barrel, etc, etc. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and find all the bolts to get this dash out, get the clocks out, and once the dash is out and this cowl is off, we'll be able to try and strip all that loom out and get it in a nice long line and see which way is best to feed it through the firewall. I really hope it goes through that way and I don't have to cut too much stuff, because some of the connectors and things I'm really hoping, no doubt in absolute vain, that they will actually marry up with some of the Yaris connectors, being that they are both similarly aged Toyotas. That is a really vague hope. The main one I'm really hoping is on the ABS module. I'm hoping that they have a common ABS module and I can just plug and play it, but we shall see. So I think what I'm going to do is we'll set up a little time lapse or something from here of me ripping it all out, and then we'll have a look at the loom once it's done. It, the dash is out. As you can see, there is loom absolutely everywhere. This is pretty classic sort of 90s-ish. I know this is 2000s technically, but it's really early 2000s, 90s type of, probably 90s, going to be a 90s design. And there's just little ECU type control boxes everywhere. This is interesting, like a central, I suppose, like a central splitter section. Again, I've been labelling stuff up as I go, just to make it easier when I'm coming to sort of try and combine the two looms together. But yeah, I can tell you for an absolute fact that the dash is not meant to come out with the steering wheel intact. You're definitely supposed to remove that. That was a bit of a struggle, but we got there. Once this loom's pulled out and the engine loom's all out, this car's pretty much done with. I think it's sort of on that note. If I just turn the camera around, this car will basically be done with, and I think now is probably a good time to go for a bit of an update on that side of things. The engine, if you've been following the channel at all, you'll know that I've been pulling the engine apart because I bought the car, I made a mistake. I thought the car was a runner when I got it. It wasn't. I was hoping the engine could be saved, and in the last episode we looked at it and it was looking fairly hopeful. It's not. The bores are knackered and they're Nicocil linered bores, which is going to be, to get that rebored is just a bit of a nightmare. So my plan going forward is the same. I'm going to pull the loom out of this. I'm going to pull that engine apart, so I'm going to pull the pistons, the rods, the crank, everything out of it, and leave the cams out of it. Basically take all the weight out of it, put it back together again, bolt the head down just roughly, and put the box back on. And then we're going to pull the Yaris forward, and I'm going to use that as a dummy engine then to get all the mounts welded in, cut any bits of chassis that need cutting, and just get the engine so you can pull it in and out, and that will make the Yaris a 2ZZ compatible Yaris. I'm also going to play with the loom from this car because there's some time to be spent with the loom in this car and the loom in that car to get them to play nice. So that's the plan with that. While I'm doing that, I will keep an eye out for a really cheap running Celica, with the intention that I can then pretty much just park the two cars up next to each other, unplug everything from the running Celica, pull the engine out, drop it into the Yaris, and plug everything in almost as if it was a straight swap. That's the plan going forward. So the content can continue, which is always good. And I don't think it's really, other than my wallet, going to affect too much. In the famous words of everyone's favourite redneck tiger keeper, pretty sure I'm never going to financially recover from this. So that's where we're at. This isn't the end of the video, don't worry. We're going to get this loom all the way out, and we're going to look at the drive shafts like I mentioned at the beginning. Still more to come, but it seemed like a good time to run the update as I was talking about getting rid of the car. So with that, let's continue with getting this loom out. So I'm just stripping out the car a bit more, getting the seats out. I figure that people don't really need to see me stripping all this out. It gets a bit samey just pulling bits of interior and loom out. However, I pulled the driver's seat out, and this was interesting. Not sure, is that incriminating evidence? Don't know. Why would you carry a serrated knife under your driver's seat? Anyway, I shan't be messaging the guy who previously owned the car to find out how he was so mechanically unsympathetic to the engine, because yeah, maybe he's terrifying. Anyway, I'm going to carry on, and we should have a look at the loom once it's out in a bit. Wicked. Engine ECU. Inside there we have an airbag ECU and we have an interior ECU. This is actually really good news because it means that hopefully we'll be able to get this ECU to run the engine in the Yaris. So what I'm going to do, move my focus from being in the car to being out here. I think the bulk of stuff goes through there, and even some of that could be lights, etc, etc. So yeah, without further ado, I think we shall be getting cracking on and doing that from over here with a bit of everyone's favourite time lapsing. So let's go. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably look at a Celica every time you see one and think, gee, I wonder how much wiring there is inside a early noughties Celica. I wonder no more, because there's this much. This here is the engine loom, and that's the interior loom. We're going to need a lot less of that, but nearly all of this. Just got to get the tape off. Some of that runs into this, because you've got the ABS, etc. And a little bit of this runs into that, where it goes to clocks and ignition, etc, etc. So all I need to do is de-tape it all, work out what's exactly what, and go from there, don't we, buddy? That is the plan of attack. So are you gonna help me untape it all? No, I didn't think so, but that's going to be a fairly long and arduous process, so we better crack on with it. So this is actually as far as we got with the loom this week. As you can see, it took me quite a long time to sit here and unpick it all, and next week we're going to have a look in a bit more detail at trying to trace through what's what and work out what we do and don't need from these looms. So that will be fun for everyone. I do need to trim the grass in my garden. I'm aware, I just spend all my time playing with cars instead. Anyway, on to something completely different. Alright then, I think it's time that we take a look at this. So we're gonna pop this boot off here, pardon me, and split this apart, check it with that. So let's just grab some cutters probably and snipper that off, and yeah, let's have a look. So what you probably didn't see me do there, because I was so far out of shot. So the CV is split, and sort of what I was half hoping for was that the Toyota CVs both ran these three balls, but they do not. The Celica runs 2, 4, 6 balls, and they sit inside of this race here and run on this here. However, we are not doomed, because if I just grab myself some circlip pliers, you can see there's a circlip there which holds the inside race of that CV on, and Google has told me, hopefully, that that spline on the end of the drive shaft there is the same as the splining on the Yaris shaft. So, big boy, fingers crossed, it's all going to work. For the time being though, just got to keep all of this safe, make sure we don't lose it, and acquire some circlip pliers, and then we'll be golden, hopefully. So that's another piece of the puzzle semi-solved. I didn't really need to split that, to be honest. Whoops. Could have just left it together and done some googling. Anyway, now you know that splitting CVs is what it is, and that's how they look inside. Next is on to putting the engine back on the stand and stripping that down. So let's do that. Alright, engine's on the stand, so on to the final little bit for this video. Apologies that it's been a bit of a bitty video. I'm kind of learning things a lot as we go along. I know my way around a car relatively well, but this is another level for me. Really interesting, hopefully interesting for you. If it is, feel free to give me a like, comment, subscribe, follow along. I think it's going to be quite a long process, hopefully an enjoyable one. This is going to be a real learning challenge. A guy on Instagram has actually now hooked me up with the Yaris wiring diagram, so thanks to Fabio on Instagram. I'll put a bit of a play on there. Follow me on Instagram, ready_sheddy_no. Let's pull this engine apart, get the crank out, get the rods out, and build our dummy engine, ready to start really cracking into the Yaris and getting that side of things going. So let's time lapse this all coming apart, and that will be it for another week. So, just like everything else in this video, change of plan again. The block, I don't know if this will show up, but there's actually, it's like a split block, and the bottom, this bottom section here forms like a cradle, and I assume that's because it's such a high revving engine. You often find with those that you get like a cradle around the crank, and it stops you getting any crank wobble as it revs up so high, because obviously you can imagine if you're spinning something that quickly, it's going to want to oscillate. Well, here I thought, rather than force you to watch me put the whole engine back together again, I'd just run through what we have with the cams off here. So the exhaust cam's back in, inlet cam sits here, and you can see, you might be able to see anyway, so from a side-on perspective there, I hope that shows up, but you can see this is the low, so the cam that sits at low RPM, and you can see the fact that this one is higher and it's wider, so it's got more lift and more duration, so that means that it opens the valve further and it keeps it open for a longer period of time, and that's good when you're absolutely gassing it. But at low revs it makes it really, really lumpy, and the engine which is why these engines and like VTEC and all of these variable valve engines are wicked, because you get all those high performance bonuses, but it runs at low revs on these much less aggressive cams. And you can see how it does it. There's 2 lobes per pair of valves. So if we look in here, 1 valve, 2 valves, and you've got the 1 lobe that runs on, well, and it's the opposite of this one, so you've got this low lift lobe runs on this runner here, and the high lift lobe runs on this here, and this is fed with oil pressure, so it's like an oil pressure switch, and you can see this is completely solid, so this is engaged from the moment you start. When there's no oil pressure in there, it's running on this. It's pushing this whole rocker arm down, and both of these valves are opening with the low lift cam. When it switches over, this, which as you can see currently, no oil pressure, pushes down. So as this is running round on the low lift, the high lift is just deforming this, and it's not doing anything to the valves. This gets fed with oil pressure, goes rock solid, and when this is solid, then obviously the high lift cam is now in play, and it's pushing on this. This is not going to be in constant contact with the low lift cam, and as such you're going to get your engine performance. And that is a very basic view, or my understanding, of how this all works. So hope you like that. I'm going to put the rest of this together now. You don't necessarily want to watch that, I'm sure. Let me know if you do, but I'm pretty confident you don't. I'm going to put the cams back in, just roughly put the engine back together again, and then we'll have our dummy engine, albeit a heavy one because all of the crank and everything is still in it. But it'll be together in case we ever need it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, about 5 seconds ago, probably, by the time I've edited this. It's been a bit bitty, and I apologise for that. That's just the nature of the beast with this one, and a lot of unexpected bits and pieces came up in this one. As you've probably seen, and you're probably aware, it's quite hard to make this video in a week with the amount of change that has happened. Hopefully going forward now, we've got a more consistent plan. And next week we'll start trying to have a look at that and have a look at some wiring diagrams. God knows I'm going to make a video about that. But until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.